But if he's constantly putting this frame that you're just the 51st state, you're actually under our jurisdiction, and you're just subordinate to us, by the time they actually get to the negotiating table, whoever's going to be negotiating on the other side of Donald Trump, before they can even negotiate, that guy's got to dig himself out of the frame. Right? And the frame is, who are you? You're my subordinate. What right do you have to negotiate anything? I hold all the cards. Is the incoming president actually interested in annexing Canada? I don't think he is at all. And I don't think he's just being a flippant idiot, but with his, Trudeau is the governor of Canada, and Canada's going to become the 51st state thing. What I think he's doing is he is setting the frame for negotiations. So what's the claim here? Which I'm going to disagree with the claim in a minute, but we'll get to that. The claim by Trump is that Canada has been taking advantage of the United States on a trade balance, with the idea that more money is going toward Canada from the United States than money is coming to the United States from Canada, right? So the idea being, okay, the amount of stuff that the United States is exporting into Canada and the money that we receive back from Canada for those exports, compared to the amount of stuff that Canada is exporting to the United States and money received back from the United States to Canada, if you sum all that up, the net flow of money is to Canada. And according to Trump, this is a bad thing because, hey, we're losing money. And so there's this argument on, we're going to, apply tariffs in order to get you back to the negotiating table. And I think negotiating table is the real thing that's going on here. Because if you think about it, what he's doing is very belittling, right? Which is, one of the reasons a lot of the people who I would say mostly people in quotes on the right that don't like Trump, or these people who pretending to be on the right who don't like Trump, whatever, it's part of the drama, criticize him for he's not presidential and he's just a big meanie and he swears and says all these crazy things on X or Twitter or Truth Social, whatever the heck it is now, and he doesn't. He's just bombastic and doesn't know what he's doing. I think this is a guy who builds skyscrapers, right? I think he knows exactly what he's doing. And from a negotiating standpoint, what it looks like to me is he's setting the frame before the negotiation, because he can't actually negotiate yet. He's not the president, but he's getting ready to negotiate. And the frame that he's setting for the people who are going to be sitting across the table for him is that they are belittled and they have basically no negotiating leverage, is what he's setting them up for. Because I mean, think about it. Like, hey, Canada. First and foremost, did Justin Trudeau quit because of the humiliation that caused strife internally with the internal politics that eventually led him to resign? I don't know, but I could see that being a contributing factor to Justin Trudeau resigning. So let's just. I mean, and even if it wasn't, I'm sure Trump will claim credit for it, right? So let's say Trump is able to claim credit for getting the leader of the other country to resign, and then continuously makes fun of that other country for simply being a subsidiary of our country, which, when you look at the economic data, that really does appear to be the case simply from geography, because the way that the geography works, it's much more difficult to go east to west in Canada than it is to go north to south. So most of the Canadian provinces, because I mean, they're like these big rectangles that go north to south, right? They do more commerce with the states to the south of them than they do with each other, right? So it's not completely without merit to say that Canada is economically subordinate to the United States. But if he's constantly putting this frame that you're just the 51st state, you're actually under our jurisdiction, and you're just subordinate to us, by the time they actually get to the negotiating table, whoever's going to be negotiating on the other side of Donald Trump, before they can even negotiate, that guy's got to dig himself out of the frame, right? And the frame is, who are you? You're my subordinate. What right do you have to negotiate anything? I hold all the cards. No, wait a minute. The reason I have all the cards, and anybody who knows anything about negotiations knows that if you're explaining anything, you're losing. if you're explaining anything, you're losing. And I mean, it, go read the book Pitch Anything. Fascinating book. And it's basically I think the guy's named Orrin Claff. I'm not wrong. I got the book over in the other room. Uh, it, it's this guy who's basically making the claim that you don't really have to know anything or be good at explaining whatever it is you're trying to pitch, as long as you understand like how to act like an alpha in the moment and how to get the person to be a beta in the moment. That really controls the dynamic much more than whatever facts are thrown on the table. An example that he gives in the book was actually Walmart. That, and I don't know if this is the case of Walmart anymore, this is what he's reporting in the book, that if you want to sell something at Walmart, or at least at the time if you wanted to sell something at Walmart, you actually had to show up to Walmart Central, which is like this massive building where you walk up to this like completely indifferent, boring secretary person who tells you to go sit down and wait at these, that basically look like kindergarten desks. It's basically to make you feel like a child. There's some boring vending machines with Walmart products. And then when they finally call you over, they bring you through these hallways of like these individual tiny rooms with one little window on it. I mean, kind of looks like a prison or like a music practice area. If you've ever been like in a musical building in a university where you have like these small individual rooms so people could go to these rooms and practice their instruments. And each person who wants to sell something to Walmart gets stuck in one of these rooms, so that you get stuck in one of these rooms, and then you just have to sit there and wait. And finally, somebody shows up with a clipboard who asks these incredibly boring, tough questions, like, "Hey, can you we need you to cut these costs by 50% if you wanna, cut the cost by 50% if you wanna do business with us." And basically by the time that you get to the point where you're able to talk to the person, you're just so belittled, befuddled, and betaed, you have no voice. Negotiations is so much more about that sort of dynamic, like setting up the frame, than it is about, well, okay, well, here's this number over here, and here's this number over here, and we want this number, and you want that number, and how do we come to it? It's way less about that and much, much more about this frame setting. So what I think Trump is doing is frame setting for whatever the heck it is that he wants. And I mean, is it the tariffs? Does he want the cash balance to start being balanced, or have more money flow this way than that? I don't know exactly what he wants, but what he's doing, I think, is setting up the frame for the negotiating table. So that Canada is completely betaed by the time they get to the negotiating table, and don't get sucked into the drama. I mean, even it's tempting to get sucked into this drama about the Gulf of America and buying Greenland and all this sort of stuff. And I want to get into buying Greenland next, because the drama, I think, also overshadows something very important. Is this guy's not an idiot. You don't build skyscrapers and become the president with all forces working against you by being an idiot. Right? He's got a style, and that style can appear idiotic. However, to say that the guy doesn't know what he's doing in a negotiation is pretty idiotic. And I think, and Greenland gets into this, what Trump is doing, he's giving the United States, I would say, a voice again, but he's utilizing the fact that the United States plays nice. What do I mean by that? So, the United States, by far, like to say, there's really not even a second place, both economically and militarily, is the strongest country the world has ever seen multiple times over. And particularly militarily, I've been watching a lot of geopolitical channels, YouTube channels recently, right? And I was watching this one that went over that if you took mutually assured destruction off the table just for a moment, right? Everybody sends nukes and the whole world blows up and there's nothing left after that. If you took that off the table just for this thought experiment, that if the entire world outside of the United States all declared war on the United States at the same time, the United States would mop the floor with the entire rest of the world. That's how much more advanced and more powerful the United States military is over the entire world. Then when you look at it economically, we are one of the rare, I mean, is it like the only country where energy independent from oil and natural gas? And in fact, natural gas is a byproduct of our energy creation. We're food independent. I don't think we're 100% fertilizer independent, but we're pretty close. We're relatively safe in the sense of we have this crazy military, but also that we're not in the kind of Afro-Eurasian conglomerate where you have all these cultures lapsed over all these resources and geographies that have been fighting each other for thousands and thousands of years without any, they don't necessarily have natural borders to protect themselves, right? We have great natural borders and friendly neighbors to the north and south. So what we've been doing since the end of World War II is the United States has, on its own dime, been patrolling the oceans of the world so everybody can trade without fear of their trade getting destroyed or captured by a enemy or privateering country, right? So the United States on its own dime, and apparently the reason for this was that after World War II, we wanted help to fight against the Soviet Union, and it was literally a bribe. Well, we said, hey, not for any economic reason. This is a foreign policy reason on our part. We will spend our money to keep the world seas safe, so you guys can trade as long as we get to dictate what your foreign policy is. That was the trade-off. And now three things going through my head at once. The United States is so strong, we're so independent, and we take care of so many other countries that it's really laughable how other countries take advantage of us. And we just kind of roll over and take it. I mean, one of the examples is and Trump's brought this up for his second term, and he addressed it in his first term, and he actually got some leeway, traction going on it, is that Europe barely pays its own NATO bills, or it's not meeting the commitments that it said it would for its NATO bills, and the United States has been backing it, or making up the difference the entire time. Another thing I was watching, the recent interview between Zelensky and Lex Friedman, I haven't finished it yet, but one of the things that Zelensky said, because Friedman and Zelensky were talking about NATO, is that the United States is really NATO, right? Like Zelensky was theorizing if Trump came out of NATO, then the whole NATO apparatus fails to be significant or fails to achieve whatever it was supposed to achieve, because the United States is really the foundation of the whole concept of NATO, which means, okay, so the United States has been protecting Europe for its entire security purposes since the end of World War II, and I'm getting here from Greenland, right? Because there's this talk about buying Greenland, which on one hand, it's kind of silly. I totally support buying Greenland. Why not? It's supposedly, under all that ice, an incredible amount of natural resources that could be exploited. I don't know how well they could be exploited while they're still under ice, but I guess presumably there is stuff that if with a little bit of effort, we could go find more natural resources to exploit up in Greenland. So what a great territory for the U.S. to acquire. And I think was it Macron or some official out of France posts this tweet of rejecting American imperialism and, hey, we're not going to stand up for this. We're here to protect Denmark and we're here to protect Greenland. And it's like, what are you going to do about it? Right? We protect the world's oceans, and we protect NATO, which is essentially protecting you against Russia. I mean, not to dive into if Russia's the good guy or the bad guy, or Ukraine's the good guy or the bad guy. Europe has always had the threat of Russia, and Europe has always had the threat of Germany, and Europe has always had the threat of France. So, I mean, this goes back to what I was saying before, is like this area of the world has just been under constant warfare for thousands and thousands of years, right? And for a brief moment, from World War II until, I guess, the invasion of Ukraine, it's been pretty calm because the United States is A, guaranteed security, and B, been the entity which has kept the USSR in check while it was still the USSR. So we're really holding the whole thing together. We're really holding the whole world order together. Oh, and I mean, just as a side note, just to mention China before somebody jumps up with that. So, well, China, the economy of China and the military of China is about to phase out of existence on its own accord. Just go look at some demographic information from China. Between the one-child policy and the fact that nobody is having any kids, I mean, by 2050, I think it's estimated that half the population of China is going to be gone because the old people have aged out and they literally didn't have the kids to replace themselves. So we're really looking at China ceasing to be a single functioning nation in the not too distant future. So, I mean, regardless of whatever China's doing or supposedly doing, or the nefarious things, or, you know, they got 200 million man military, or they built a new aircraft carrier that was designed off a cruise ship, or look at the economic something. China is it's just on its way out, on its own accord. It's completely on its way out on its own accord. But going back to the United States is really holding everything together. I don't think it's a big ask to say, look, we're holding everything together. You guys everybody else needs to treat us with a little bit more respect here. I think that's what Trump is getting at. Everybody else needs to treat us with a little bit more respect here because we're holding everything together. Now, what I don't mean by that is, okay, let's go invade this country, let's go invade that country, let's do, blow this up and Iraq this and nation build. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is if we want to fucking buy Greenland, that's between us and Greenland/Denmark, right? Like, France can go take a hike. If we want to adjust the way that we do business with Canada, Canada could suck it up, right? I mean, I want Canada to flourish. I want Canada to be a great place. I don't think I really want you to become part of the United States because I fear what that would do to the Electoral College. But we have the ability to do these things, and everybody just takes advantage of us and says, oh, you're this evil empire and whatever. And yes, there is an evil empire nature to the United States. Absolutely. I mean, I just said Iraq and Afghanistan, right? Blowing up Libya. There is an evil empire nature to the United States, but it's nothing. It's nothing compared to, for example, the USSR/Russia. It's nothing compared to China, right? At least when we go about what we go about the United States, there's this assumption of human rights that we're supposed to live up to. We don't live up to it, but we still measure it by that, right? Other places around the world, they don't do that. In almost all of human history, you go in, you rape, you pillage, you slaughter, you take what you can, and you go, we won, aren't we great? There's no self-reflection, right? There's no, hey, wait a minute, hey, aren't all humans equal and we shouldn't be doing this to other humans? There's no breaks, right? What I'm saying is, yes, the United States is evil stuff, but we have like a culture that carries its own breaks to try to slow us down from doing evil things like this. Other cultures don't have that. They don't have that. And I mean, if you don't know enough Russian history, before the USSR, during the USSR, after the USSR, I don't know what to tell you. I'm glad I didn't get born in Russia. Like, Russian history is gnarly. Chinese history is gnarly. So just going back to Trump here. When he's bombastic, when he's belittling Justin Trudeau, making fun of Canada for being the 51st state, this thing about Greenland. I'm not sure what's up with the Gulf of America. I don't even have an opinion on that. But, he's not dumb. He's got something in mind. We might disagree with what he's got in mind. I am going to disagree with something in a second. We might disagree what he has in mind, but I think he's really getting at, and isn't this kind of the ethos of making America great again? He's really getting at, look, we're the richest country on earth. We're not the only country on earth. There's other people. We want to respect them. We want them to be successful. But we have been holding you all up, and we don't need to. We don't need to take your shit, right? If we've been supporting you, we don't need to take your shit. If you have a bad attitude about the fact that, hey, wait a minute, maybe we don't want to support you anymore because we don't like your attitude. Oh, we're just going to have a bigger attitude about it. I mean, remember, did you see the clip of when Trump was having the discussion with the European leaders about paying for NATO, and he was essentially saying something to these leaders like, I expect you to start paying more right now. Not a year from now, not a month from now. Don't go back to your relative countries and talk about it. I expect you to start paying for it right now. And like the people around the table were laughing at him. Why are you laughing at us? We pay for it. Your protection. And the countries over there right now are sweating fucking balls because of Russia. Well, Dylan, how do you know that Russia wants to go past Ukraine? And that's not what I'm talking about. Historically speaking, there's a lot of countries in Europe that have over and over and over again been conquered by Russia, right? It's not like there's no historical context of Russia coming in there over and over and over and over and over again. Take Finland, for example. Take the Balkan states. Not the Balkan states. The ones up north: Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia. Though I mean. Take Poland, for example. They have just been harassed by Russia over and over and over again. And this idea that, well, NATO is just expanding in Russia's direction and they're being mean to Russia, completely overlooks the fact that these countries were jumping up and down trying to get into NATO because they have such a ridiculous history of Russia invading them over and over and over again, and they wanted protection against Russia. So, I mean, I don't know what Russia's going to do. I don't know what's in Putin's head, but I'm just saying that there is a very big historical precedent that these countries are worried about Russia invading them. So for them to sit at the motherfucking table and laugh at Trump back in 2016 or 17 or whatever it was, about them paying up for their, in quotes, fair share of NATO, I mean, talk about disrespectful. So I think getting some respect, particularly because we're funding the whole thing and protecting you, right? So getting some respect on the table, I think, is one of the things that he's going for. And it's more than just respect, because once you have the respect, then the negotiations go differently. And I'm very excited to see how these Canadian negotiations go. Everyone, please like, comment, and subscribe to help us grow this channel. I think we cover a lot of good stuff. We're covering ideas that you're not hearing anywhere else. Economic ideas, historical ideas, systematic politics ideas you're not hearing anywhere else.